Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Future Friday, we're gonna talk about how to protect India from overheating. Last summer was brutal, so we need to take some actions. Well, what does overheating actually means? Well, overheating means basically you have to understand human body is a hot engine and it has a basically core temperature of 36 degrees Celsius to 37.5 degrees Celsius. Generally, your body will do its damn best to keep the core at this temperature. Now, in Fahrenheit, it translates to 96.8 degree Fahrenheit to 99.5 degree Fahrenheit. So this is the core point. Now, then you were like, okay, if the core is this hot, so to say, why do we need air conditioner at 24 or 25 degrees Celsius? Well, here's the deal. Think of it as a thermal engine. If your core is this hot and if the ambient becomes same temperature, it's very hard for waste energy to go from here to outside. That's why we want air temperature to be cold. Now, what is the maximum hot temperature you can withstand? Generally, the maximum is 44 degrees Celsius. If your core reaches to this point, you are almost likely dead. Basically, it's not a fever at that point. It's like if any patients come there, most likely they will be unconscious or in coma. They will put you in freeze. Like they will literally do their damn best to drop the temperature. This cannot be sustained for minutes. So this is the upper limit. This is our overheating temperature. Meaning if ambient air is at this temperature and we are exposed to it for long duration, we're gonna pass away. It's not like, we can be strong, you can be robust. No, no, no. You just disappear at this temperature. And it translates to 111.2 degree Fahrenheit. So that is the most we can withstand for Koda. And be mindful, generally that does not mean withstand as in like me good. It's like, yeah, maybe you survive. And maybe you survive simply means you may have brain damage, organ failures and things of that nature. So that should give you some context what kind of temperature range we are working on. And be mindful, the 32 to 37, ideally you want air temperature to be always below that. Only then your body can dump heat without too much hassle. Because even evaporation, you have to understand, we are not a water tank. We cannot just keep running water like sweat. And again, the more water you boil away from sweat, the more your kidney has to work hard to remove impurities and things of that nature. So ambient temperature of 45 degrees Celsius is generally classified as hell of a hazard. Get out of there. Meaning, if I go to my rooftop during peak summer, it does cross this temperature. Now, does that mean if I get exposed to it, me dead? No. My body, first, it will be an initial shock. Then I will sweat a lot. Again, as long as I'm in that phase, like that is like first few minutes, I'm good. Like I can go there, look out things and then come back, no problem. But if I stay there, yeah, then it's a really, really bad situation. So if your outdoor temperature starts to exceed 111.2 degree Fahrenheit, yeah, its long-term exposure is a hazard to serious danger. Now, why it is serious danger? Not only that temperature is very hot for your core, it also starts to break down proteins. Meaning many protein structures will become, basically they will no longer function as they're supposed to. There is an upper limit to them. So this is the basically as current as I can find, like as in the hot heat map. This is from May 3 May 2024. As you can see, most of the places have already crossed 40 to 42 degrees Celsius. Some places did touch 44 to 46 degrees Celsius. Yeah, 51 degrees Celsius is known for us. Like we know 51 degrees Celsius. So what does this mean? If this trend continues in next 2 to 3 years, we'll reach a point where entire summer month is a no-go zone for outdoor, meaning you cannot be outdoor for any duration of time. Meaning, yeah, you can drive a car as long as it has a very powerful AC, but you can't be there for long. And even if you are exposed to it, you must have like full clothing, so you do not, and lot of water and umbrella. So that basically you cannot have farmers working there or construction working there. It's way too hot. And I'm not guaranteed about this data point, but apparently there is an upper limit of airport temperature. If runway tarmac starts to become too hot, yeah, planes would be like, nope, air density too low, as in like to take off thrust. So overheating is a serious issue. We are reaching a point where if we do not take instantaneous action right now, we're gonna be in hell of a trouble. So first line of defense, water. Now, all reservoirs, however many reservoirs India has, requires shielding against two core vectors, so we do not lose all of it. One vector is sun, another vector is airflow. You have to understand, whenever we build a dam, we used to think it's a good thing. Now, reality has taught us that if you build a dam, your river dies. Now, our original calculation was, it's going to take like, 40, 50 years. It's like, no, dead, done, gone home. Like dams are one of those human mistakes or human folly, if you want to call it that, is that we thought it was a good thing, but it was almost like what we were trying to do is like you drink water, but you do not pee out. you die. And same thing is happening with our reserves. So how can we slow it down? Well, we can take action against this primary failure. Once you make a reservoir, you increase the surface area for that water exponentially. Meaning if river was flowing, it was dealing with, let's say, 10,000 meter square. Now you are exposed it to 100,000 meter square, as in, like, yes, reservoirs are exponentially larger. Look into Google map before and after dam construction, you will find how huge of a surface area we do. That surface area gives sunlight, lot of place to make love. On top of that, because wind is blowing in that area, molecules that are at the surface yeet out of there. So depth does not matter that much, it's the surface area. So the bigger the surface area, the more air makes love to it, the more sunlight dumps energy to it, the more surface molecules gets excited and yeet. So even in winter you are losing water. So we have to shield it. What are the tools that we need to do? Like, okay, if we built a reservoir, that was a bad idea, reservoir is losing water. What can we do to stop it? You have two tools to attack it. First is these cheap tools, which we call shade balls. Now these balls are made out of a specific type of food grade plastic. Now if you know anything about plastic, you know for a fact that plastic has only one weakness: ultraviolet. Sunlight has bonkers amount of ultraviolet. So how do you manage it? Well, they use what we call carbon black as a dye agent. And that puppy makes it resilient and robust against ultraviolet, meaning these puppies can last in outdoor environment exposed to the raw sunlight for 10 years. And yes, they are that old, so we know that it does work. So that's how, and these balls are basically filled with water to some extent and mostly air. And they stop evaporation. You're like, wait a minute, isn't this black? Wouldn't this overheat? Yeah, the outside temperature does get hotter, but here's the deal. Because it's filled with air, it does not conduct that effectively. It's not like a copper block. It's not going to conduct heat very efficiently. Yes, the surface temperature does get heated up, but it's not like, instantly all the temperature goes into the bottom part of it. So it's a very good insulation kind of material. Not perfect, but it does work. And because it seals such a large surface area, water does not make love with air. Benefit is, even if the water temperature is hotter, it does not lose too much of it. Why? It's sealed. It's like, imagine it this way. You have a water tank, right? It's sealed, completely sealed water tank. But what difference it will make if your temperature goes up? Nothing. Like if you have 100 liters of water, you heat it up, you still have 100 liters of water as long as it's completely sealed. So that's what it is. Now, it's not perfectly sealed, but it is much better than before. And this was done in California during drought season. So we have data that this is a net positive effect where we built it, and it had the biggest benefit of this is no birds try to even come close to this. Like birds are like yeet out of there. No birds. So no bird pooped. And because it blocks all the light reaching from the basically surface, there is another benefit. You no longer have to deal with algae bloom, and you no longer have to deal with, in their case, a carcinogenic production that was happening because of sunlight making love to chlorine. So the photoreactions were causing serious carcinogenic production. Companies were like very shocked. It's like brewery company that was making our drinks. They were like, hey, we're getting poison in our water. California government is like, we checked our water filtration site, no problem there. So what the hell? Like, we created clean water, you got poison water. What the hell happened? This happened in the middle. Basically a giant surface area where you had chlorine making love to sunlight, and bad things were happening with bromide. So this stops that. So it's fundamentally time-tested, verified, absolute data set where we can use this to slow down water evaporation. Now, it will not eliminate it, but comparing to hundreds of liters of loss per second, dropping it to like, few liters, good. So that is one tool, cheap, effective, and why it's ball. So again, the water levels can go up and down without any issue. That's one tool. Second tool, solar panels. Now you have to understand, dams were one of those things that we thought it has awesome potential. Reality is not that good. What does that mean? That simply means if you look into any big dam, let's say Three Gorges Dam, it has like freaking 12 gigawatts of capacity. That's bonkersly high. How many times does it actually produce that? Almost never. Like literally. Rarely. Like we call it uptime. You would think uptimes has something with solar panels and wind farms. Yeah, it also applies on hydro dams. They do not have that kind of uptime. What does that mean? That simply means when you built it, you will design the transformers and all that jazz. So the substation, the power plant structure of it is designed for that maximum power, 12 gigawatt. You're not producing that much. What does that mean? That simply means you have spare capacity. What does solar require? Once you start to make it huge, gigawatts of output, it needs somewhere to dump that energy. Ta-la! So again, I have linked the video down below. It's quite a clever idea. It's like, I have a reservoir, I cover it with solar farm. It requires a lot of grid infrastructure to dump that kind of energy, because you're not talking about watts or kilowatts. You're talking 10 megawatts to hundreds of megawatt, or maybe even gigawatt at very large scales. So how do you dump that kind of energy? You already have substation built there, already at that capacity. So they scaled it in such a way that generally, let's say dam built this much capacity, electrical production is here. So this is an empty space. They are like, okay, let's fill that space with solar. Double benefit, and it does reduce basically water evaporative loss and all that jazz. So it's a net positive thing. This is just a water preservation. This is water preservation with extra electricity, which again everybody wants electricity, so voila, you go there. Consequence, they have not installed laser defense system, so birds poop the hell out of it. That's another benefit of this black structure. They are like bird poop proof. This is not. So companies are working on laser grid array. So that's the options on the reservoir. Then we have canals. Now canals takes water from these sort of reservoir and dumps it into farming land. That is a very bad idea. That's like Soviet Union bad idea. That's almost like what Stalin wanted to do, because he knew for a fact that most of the water will evaporate away. You know this, like a hydrogeologist, their first job is like, oh, I'm going to build this canal. How much water I have to send to be useful on the other end? You will be shocked how bad that answer is. Real life. And that was optimistic answer. Real world is like lol. You send 3 gorgeous dam of reservoir, and the other side China is like, where is the water? That's happening in real life. So fundamentally, all the canals have to be converted into closed top or pipelines, because pipeline, even if it heats up, you still get like 100 liter percent, 100 liter goes out the other end. So we have to do that. That's again, I've linked video down below. That's a very good project. People are doing that. It's a really good tool. And then how do we preserve the whatever little rivers we have? River deepening projects we have to do. Basically, you reduce the surface area, dredge it down, and use the material to cast some niches or ridges, I would say. So the water, all the water flows into the central part, and then it's like protected, as much protected as. This is the next best thing we can do other than removing the dams. So these things will give us enough water to last another year, and then we can figure things out. A year or a decade, depending on how you want to count it. So let's focus on food. Once we have taken care of water, the next problem becomes food. Well, what does we have to do in order to make sure that we have food supply? Well, first thing is we have to go healthy soil. Right now our farming techniques are ancient. Now thankfully enough people have realized that, and new changes have been made, that thankfully we know what to do in order to have healthy soil, meaning instead of growing crops we have to grow soil, and side effect would be crops. Yes, that's possible. So what are the tools in order to do that? Well, there are 3 core tools that we have to deploy. So first tool is cover crops, meaning if you have ever been to a forest, you would notice something weird, that there is no patch of soil available. Like of course you would have small patches here and there, but like giant piece of land that is just empty, that's not possible. Nature works its ass off to make sure that every single square inch is covered. While plant leaves and plant structure can handle ultraviolet and the solar radiation, soil cannot. Specifically the bacterium and the fungus and all the bioorganism that is in the surface, like first few inches of the soil, yeah, they cannot handle it. So if you do not want soil to be sterile, you always want to have it covered. That's why nature, like whenever you leave a pot of land that is completely, nature does try to fill it up. It's almost like a wound sealing itself. Biological shell of this planet is trying to seal itself. So we really have to let go of this idea. If you can see the soil, it's bad. As simple as that. You always have a cover. Like this would be your cash crop and this would be cover crops. Now there is a whole equation, whole mathematics. Now mathematics does not mean like actual mathematics. It's more of like, okay, what season it is, what is the soil pH level and all those jazz. And even in India, we have what we call Krishi Vigyan Kendra. So Krishi Vigyan Kendra is basically Indian government's repository of all the knowledge for agriculture sector, and they are supposed to help people with agriculture. So they can tell you like, okay, in this sort of soil, this sort of cover crops will work perfectly. Meaning if you want this, this will be a good pairing with it. And yes, there are machines, and even normal machines can most likely work through it without any issue. That's the first tool. Thou shall not have naked soil. Naked soil equals dead soil. You do not want dead soil. And this also keeps the temperature low. So that's the first line of defense. Second is zero tillage, meaning back in the ancient time, once we figured out that we can do this to the soil, we kind of made it into a habit of doing that to the soil every time we were planting new trees. That annihilated the soil. Now soil is like a groundwater reservoir. So it had enough oomph before humans even came to pick a picture, enough biodiversity, enough bioorganism that it lasted for a few decades. Yeah, but now it's like, yeah, man, we cannot do this anymore. So we tapped out. Basically, we have drained it. So zero tillage is a very simple way of not destroying what nature is building. Whenever you have this sort of crop, there is a whole bioorganism growing on the soil. Now, what nature tries to do is create a fungal network inside that, which we call mycelium network. It's a very new discovery, as in like after year 2000 discovery. It's not like we known this from 1970. It's surprisingly new. And if you ever wondered what the hell they were talking about in the movie Avatar 2009 one, yeah, that's what they were talking about, a mycelium network. Yes, it's a real thing. We have tested it, verified it, and were scared the hell out of it in terms of like what kind of capacity it has. It can equalize nutrition. We thought of that. Okay, it makes sense. Like you will have a natural structure that can like, okay, this patch is low on calcium, let's move calcium from here to here. We thought of that. Yeah, this puppy is a network. What does that mean? That simply means if insects, let's say insect goes boom on this part, all other plants will dump their excess insecticide on surrounding area, meaning they can cauterize the wound. That's why natural forests do not get devoured. Like we have all the issues like, oh, pest destroyed all our crops. How the heck they cannot do that to the forest? Because forest has a mycelium network. That mycelium network is like attack detected, countermeasure deployed, sealing that wound, done, problem solved. And yes, all of these things were tested with like radioactive carbon in order to just figure out, is it actually moving that much? Yeah, we were scared. That's how good this thing is. Like it's an actual algorithmic intelligence where it figures things out. So zero tillage allows that fungal network to grow, because it's not something like tada, it takes years upon years to grow, to become that competent, that capable. So we have to use this. Basically, these are tiny blades that are just anything. You're not destroying or annihilating the soil. Thou shall not destroy or annihilate the soil. And because we broke the natural order, when nature tried to fulfill itself, basically trying put crops there, we are like, oh, this is so pest. It's like, no, we messed it up. This is what nature is expecting. You can crop as much as you want, no problem. Thou shall not have naked soil. Nature is trying to fulfill it. It's like we have so much kharpatwar, we call it in Hindi, where it's like, bad plants are taking over. It's not bad plants. You should not give them space. That's all nature is asking of you. Do as much farming as you want. Thou shall not give me blank space. Cover the blank space with what you consider to be adequate, and voila, problem solved. Zero tilling, so you do not destroy a last crop cycles of biodiversity that is in the soil, the ecology. And voila, we have the tools in India, in everywhere. And the farmers that have been doing this for a few years, let that be very clear. These are the primary tools. Third tool is crop cycling, that you have to actually circulate the cycle. You cannot be like, oh, every year I'm planting tomatoes. No, you have to cycle it. Like, yeah, it's painful, it's less productive, but in long term, it's like, oh, I invested in mutual fund 50 years ago. It's exponential benefit. People who have done this, all these three things have to be done. In less than 10 years, they reached a point where they no longer need fertilizer. Think about it. Like we have small farms, right? Like this is small farm, right? You take the surface area of it. How much biomass is there? You take that, like say per meter cube, this much biomass is there. Awesome. Compare that to a forest. Forest is like, bruh, please. And yes, dude, nobody is doing any management on the forest, natural forest specifically. Natural forest can burn down and it's like, I got this, fam. So where is that I got this, fam? Healthy soil. We've forgotten about this. So we are replacing the healthy soil with powder or nutrition externally given. Nature cannot digest it. It was not designed to digest from that. It's designed to digest from mycelium network. Mycelium network's job is like, I got this. And you build it, you cycle it. That's why we have cover crops. Cover crops recharges the nitrogen in the soil. So all these three tools with intelligence, basically you are replacing horsepower with brain power. You have to do some studies, you have to study the soil, you have to study the pH. Done correctly, it gives exponential result over time. That's the sad part. It's not for farmer who's like, I planted it, I get profit. No, it's a farmer that has patience, at least 5 years of patience. Once you have that, then it's like profit. And yes, even in India, even in Ukraine, even in Russia, more than enough farmers have realized that this is the proper way of doing things. Almost all countries that I have looked into it, they have their own, Krishi Vigyan, their own branch of government that is dedicated to agriculture. All of them are spouting the same thing: cover crops, zero tillage, crop cycling. And we have to have, in case of India, temperature sensor at certain locations for water cool off period. Meaning, if we do not do it, if we are let the water during evening or during night, and again, water will go into the soil, that's good and awesome. But problem is, if soil overheats, again, the protein will no longer function. So you can plant the seed and seeds would be sterile, so to say, because of the heat. So we have to have temperature sensor, because we cannot water at the peak time. Too much water would be lost. But if we know when overheating is being approached, let's say our hotspot is 40 degrees Celsius. You do not want your soil to be more than 40 degrees Celsius. Soil is starting to reach 38 degrees Celsius, you run the water. Just cool it down just enough. Basically that peak 2 hour noon time period, basically from 12 noon to, let's say, 2 p.m. in that hotspot, you just keep cooling it. Again, you can do it from weather, but it's much better to do it based on soil, because if the soil is healthy enough, it can handle it. But again, if it's losing moisture exponentially, then you will know it's like, hey, for 1 week my temperature was fine and now it's reaching that red zone, let's flush waters up there. So that gives you a good effective way of cooling the soil before cooking the crops, so to say. And working lights have to be introduced, because again, at current level of temperature of 45 degrees Celsius or 51 degrees Celsius, yeah, it's lethal for people. They would need air conditioned cabins, which again, many farmers in South India is already doing that, but we need to shift our cycle. Again, not everybody can afford that sort of system. So these are the tools that will allow us to sort the food part of it. 3 tools with proper brain power, problem solved. And again, this also keeps the soil temperature low and also helps with rainwater recharging. Then we come to the concrete jungle part of it. The first tool we have to deploy is self-cooling paints. Now, what is this idea of self-cooling paint? Well, this is air conditioning without requiring any water or electricity. Yes, it goes below ambient, meaning it's not just a fan that is circulating air. So if, let's say, air temperature is 35 degrees Celsius, this can bring it down to, let's say, 32 degrees Celsius or even 30 degrees Celsius. At night, actually much lower than that. So how the heck it's working? It's very simple flaw of our atmosphere. Our atmosphere has greenhouse effect. Now here's the deal. If you know what our atmosphere is, it's not magic. It's made out of 3 core components. It has carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. So these 3 things, and again, water vapor and some argon and some neons and some stuff. So this core mixture has a bandwidth, and based on its bandwidth, it's reacting to basically infrared, the heat part of it, or the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So sun dumps GG amount of energy, broad spectrum energy. Energy comes in, things heat up, it dumps the energy back. Now majority of energy goes to the space. Why? There is an IR window, but things that shift, basically everything that is absorbing energy when emitting in the spectrum is changing, meaning it can absorb ultraviolet, emit infrared, absorb optical, emit infrared. So that's why infrared is a lower system. But carbon dioxide blocks that process. Again, only to some extent, because again, if you are blocking 100% of the energy leaving there, we will be cooked in few days. So what Sky Cool panel does is very clever. So they have a perfectly white coating. Now benefit of this coating is, it's designed in such a way that it can withstand 1 kilowatt per meter square of solar radiation. Sun goes YOLO on it, it reflects almost pure 100%. Pure, as close to pure 100% is possible. It reflects all of them. Okay, all that does you is like, you do not heat, but again, ambient air, you will be at ambient air temperature if you can do that perfectly. Like ultra white paints are a normal thing, and people have coated their roof, and it's like, hey, instead of, let's say, my roof temperature being 55 degrees Celsius, it's now only 50 degrees Celsius. That's good, that's awesome. But this goes one step further. Not only it has white, it has selective characteristics, meaning it emits in that gap. Basically, there is a gap in infrared spectrum that if you emit heat energy in that spectrum, it just goes to space. What does that mean? That simply means photon goes up, never comes back. The energy, basically, you are creating a heat pipe from Earth's surface to vacuum of space, which is absolute zero. And yes, space is absolute zero. It's just that if you have things are there like molecules, air, yes, there are some atmosphere even in moon. So if you have those things have temperatures. If you have like any asteroid that is being blasted by solar radiation, that has temperature. The vacuum of space itself, there is nothing to have temperature, is absolute zero. So IR window allows us to dump that heat. Now this is the good part. You can see it uncoated, nothing fancy, 65 degrees Celsius. Coat it, not only it reflects it, so if you do normal ultra white coating, 65 would be dropped to, let's be optimistic, 50 degrees Celsius. This puppy goes to 35. How the heck that's possible? Generally lower than air temperature. How? Well, because it's dumping heat in that IR spectrum, and that heat is not coming back. So basically it's a heat thermal siphon, where it's just like you have a cold sink that is much colder than your high temperature, and it's like just going there, no coming back. And again, what's the capacity of this cold reservoir? Infinity. Like literally infinity. So you do not have to worry about it. So this works. Now, are there limitations to it? Yes. While this system is awesome and compulsory for India's future survival, it does have very low capacity, meaning sun dumps almost 1 kilowatt per meter square energy. Oomph. This puppy cannot dump that much back. It can reflect 100% of solar light almost, but it can only dump 10 to 20 watts per meter square. It does get higher at night, because again, some amount of photons will break through it. So in daytime, it would be 10 to 20 watts per meter square. At night time, it could get as high as like 30. So it's not a lot. So you do need large surface area. But the benefit is there is no water consumption, there is no electricity consumption. It works 24/7, and the only flaw is that water vapor blocks it. So in a rainy season it will not work, in a cloudy season it will not work, or in a foggy season it will not work. If you have the raw clean sky that which we Indian gets around 100 to 200 days, that pure unadulterated sun, this is like, bruh, don't even bother me. It like heats up, it basically dumps all the heat. So what does that mean? That simply means you have a building, you paint this one, it's rooftop, because it does need to see the vacuum of space. It cannot be under anything. It has to see the vacuum. Photons have to see that part to go there. So you have this, it cools. Okay, so let's say sunset happens, it starts to dump as much heat as it can, and it's not receiving any new heat. It's trying to soak up all the ambient heat and dump it. Temperature goes down, the building starts to cool down. It cools down, cool down. It goes to a lower temperature, lower than ambient. It will do its best. And again, if you design it in such a way where it's like panels, you are running in the water, it's cooling water, you can even channel it where exactly you are focusing that cooling, and you can keep cooling it. And daytime, instead of heating, it's like lower cooling. So at night time, let's say cooling power of a large surface area could be, let's say, 3 kilowatt of cooling power. In daytime, the 3 kilowatt will go down to 1 kilowatt of cooling power, free. So this is something compulsory for us. As you can see, like 42 degrees Celsius, ultra white paint with space reflective capability, voila, almost reaching 15 degrees Celsius, below ambient. So we have to do this. Like, this is something compulsory. Thankfully, the technology is done, research is done. What we have to figure out is basically how to bind this puppy. That's the part that we are still struggling with. Basically, the particle selection, I have linked the video down below. That's sorted. You can manufacture it at home also if you want to do it. So those parts are sorted. It's just that we have to find a coating material for it. So this has to be absolute priority for Indian government. Get this production in mass, this stuff in mass production as quickly as possible. And again, this is a passive way of taking care of our overheating problem. Now, those things are big tools. What about wisdom that you and I can do? Well, the first thing we have to understand is like India has to let go of this attitude. This is very prevalent in Asia, where we have giant apartment complex, expensive apartment complex, but they do not even plan or even think about using, like, a collective unit where you can have this sort of cooling tower units. Now, these things are far more efficient compared to having small of them. And efficiency gap is exponential. The more smaller units you have, this will be like, I could have 3 of this and replace all this much, and you will get far higher energy efficiency. So this is one small step that we can take, which will have exponential benefit. And not only your electrical consumption will go down, it will also make it easier to maintain and service. And because again, you compare this compressor type, you generally get scroll compressor on the ACs. Here you get not scroll compressor, pardon me, you get rotary compressor in a small ACs, and larger one you get scroll compressors. Larger one also has advanced systems, for example, thermal expansion valve, electronically controlled ones. Those are generally present on the big units. Smaller units, good luck, some units may have it, but most don't. So you get a lot of benefit of scale, where you have like, yeah, this has higher capital expenditure, but benefit is the oomph that you get with the same amount of energy. If I give you 10 kilowatt hour capacity, how much cooling you can do, this will do more compared to this. So we have to let this go. Yes, this is a collective wisdom requirement. It cannot be done to a society where it's like everybody's like, no, I only want mind. Yeah, this cannot be done. If all of us have to convert apartment complex like a hotel, where they're like, okay, we have one collective unit, it has to be done. And other tools that will make our job much easier is ice battery. I've already made a detailed video about that. But the idea is you do not run them at day. You basically only start them when sun goes down, meaning sunset has happened, temperature of earth starting to go down. You run these puppies, you make a giant ice block as like you cool as much as you can. And why would you want to do it at night? Well, COP would be better. Air temperature goes down after sunset. So sun has set, and until sunrise, the temperature will constantly go down. So your COP, coefficient of performance, will improve. So it's much better to run AC. Same amount of units of power, let's say 100 units of power, 1 kilowatt hour, 100 unit you have. This will do much more work, much more heat pumping at night from sunset to sunrise compared to daytime. So it's much better. Now you run that, basically freeze ice overnight. And what do? How do you cool the building? Well, run the cool water. And you're like, would it dehumidify? Yes. Any water that is almost at 0 degrees Celsius with some antifreeze, it will be more than enough to, dehumidify air. And that's how all buildings are cooled, literally. So ice battery is a known technology. We just have to be collectively wise enough. It's like, yeah, this is an effective way of doing it. And again, it also extends the life of the equipments. Bare minimum, in an unoptimized system, you're looking at 10% energy efficiency. At well-optimized, like fine-tuned system where professionals are taking care of it, you're looking at 30% energy saving. And yes, it has been done on district cooling sizes. So big puppies. Like how big of energy saving we are talking? 30 megawatt of peak loading was shaved off because of this ice battery. So big puppy. So basically we have to be collectively wise about things rather than just like, oh, I get my AC, you deal with your AC, everybody gets cooked. If we have collective wisdom, everybody enjoys a higher quality of life while expending less money. And those are some big things. What small things we can do? Well, we have to make a habit of cleaning condenser and evaporator coils. This again, I'm also guilty of it. Only recently I made it a like actual habit where it's like, no, let's clean. Basically, after every winter, clean your AC, and I mean actually clean it, like with proper pressure washer if you can do that. If not, like there are some dedicated brushes or some foam supplies that you can use. And yes, this will directly reduce your energy consumption directly. You do it annually, or if you are live in a very dirty place which is sticky oils, basically any kitchens are near you, yeah, then you will have a scenario where you may have to do this every month. But again, direct benefit would be you get far more energy efficiency. Another thing would be like, again, this I have not seen too much Americans dealing with this, but it's a common thing in India, is that we have AC lines. They do not have a direct dedicated conduit for it. So line insulations, they fall apart. Modern systems, thankfully, we went away from that cheap white foam we used to use to black high quality foam, but again, they know that it will not last, so they have taped over it. So all the modern AC installation, they have insulation that's going to last longer, but older ones, they are falling apart. The line insulation is falling apart. So, and again, you will like, how much energy will be lost? A lot. Why? What happens to that line? It condensates. What does that mean? That simply means steam that is in the air or moisture in the air condenses. It's going through phase change. When you do the phase change, you dump a lot of energy. So basically your liquid that's supposed to return and expand in your evaporator, it's preheated. It's unwise, wasteful. That's why we have insulation on them in the first place. So it's not something that, who cares? It's something that you should care. Cleaning it, you should care, and this will directly reflect in your basically electricity bill. Like it has surprisingly large effect. So there are some wisdom steps that we can do that will allow us to survive next few years until we can take care of the global warming thing. So these are few steps that can help us to protect us from overheating. So this was my presentation on basically how to protect India from overheating. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it among your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.